When it comes to arguing with your spouse, the conventional wisdom says never, ever, ever do it in front of your kids. But a new article in the Wall Street Journal looks at the case for healthy disagreements that may actually help children later in life. Andrea Petersen wrote the story for the Journal. She's with us now, along with Dr. Harold Koplewicz. He's president of the Child Mind Institute. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Andrea, we're going to start with you because this goes against everything that most of us have been told. So how do arguments help?
Basically, every person is going to have disagreements in their life.
Yes.
And what child psychologists that I talk to have said is that, you know, it's better to be able to model constructive conflict and problem-solving skills, and that's a real gift you can actually give to your kids that they can take in their future relationships.
But isn't it hard to expect rational behavior in an irrational moment? Sometimes you are so amped up in the middle of the argument. It is very hard to be rational.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And there are other experts that I talked to that said because it is so difficult, you still want to keep it behind closed doors. But so the key is really, okay, so if you're going to argue, how do you do it in a healthy way that does sort of give kids these skills but doesn't sort of traumatize them? Because there is our research that says that, you know, toxic arguments can really be very damaging and lead to things like anxiety, depression, behavior problems.
In fact, doctor, the research is very clear about that. There are effects on children's brain, even infants, when you have people arguing. You can see changes in their brain.
Even while they're sleeping.
Yes.
So the thing that's really important is that high conflict arguments are bad for kids. High conflict marriages are bad for kids. You don't want to see screaming, yelling, and you also don't want contempt and disdain. You don't want that eye rolling, and you don't want your kids to see that you're not a united front. Even kids who are smart enough to say, Mom's easy, I'm going to ask her first, and Dad's hard, so I'm not going to ask him, really don't want that. They want parents to really be bonded. And the problem with fighting constructively is that it can get hot very quickly. So some of the experts in the article suggested a 5-minute rule, or if you get to the 5 on a 10 scale, that's bad. Well, I have to tell you, when I still fight with my wife, I can tell you that I don't know when I'm at 5, but I certainly think.
But maybe she's at 5 and you're at 7.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
Yes.
So especially if there's an audience. And
Yes.
I think that the other thing that parents have to know is that if your kids are there, very often, particularly if there are boys in the room, it escalates. That's bad for them and for you.
What I really liked about your piece, Andrea, is I think we all know it's really bad to fight in front of our kids, right? It's not a good thing. But you make the argument that if you can have a healthy disagreement with a positive outcome, that is a foundation for life. And I've seen this in my kids' school, that they are teaching conflict resolution among kids. That is undervalued.
Right. And the thing is, I talked to several parents who, because of the way their own parents fought or didn't fight, several of them who never fought at all, and then they felt actually really ill-equipped to deal with, and they found themselves very conflict averse and not able to handle themselves in a conflict. So they've actually vowed to do things differently with their children, and that means trying to fight in a healthy way.
So I think one of the things that the teachable moment here might be that parents should know that if it's getting too uncomfortable, either parent can call for a timeout, and that's a good model. For a parent to say, you know what, we're going to discuss this later. Or Mom and Dad will get back to you after we discuss it. The other thing is, what's the reaction the kid has? If your kid starts to cry, if he looks scared, if he looks more irritable, or she seems to be really becoming anxious, that's the signal, the red flag. Let's stop this discussion right now and and we'll come back to it. We'll tell you our decision afterwards.
And that was actually interesting for me because I think, you know, obviously if a child is crying, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
You stop the argument. But other sort of cues are a little bit more subtle, like the kid who kind of freezes and doesn't move for a few minutes, or kind of slumps over and looks a little depressed, or a kid who tries to insert themselves in the argument,
try to make it better,
to try to mediate it, or just misbehaves themselves because they're trying to divert the attention away from the argument.
Yeah, I mean, the teachable moment is clear. It just seems to me that there's a fundamental point here that it's important to be able to argue and differ over issues, because there's always conflict in life among everyone.
Without calling people names.
Without calling people
without
names.
Insults, without...
And just to figure how to do that, to do it with respect in a genuine way.
And to remember they're always listening. I was surprised when you said kids can hear you even when they're sleeping. Because kids always act like they're not listening, they'll be coloring, or act like they're looking at TV, but they're really paying attention to everything you're saying.
Well, that's actually how this article came to be. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter, and I was sort of grappling with this in my own marriage, and my husband and I had tried to sort of remove ourselves from we were arguing about something in the kitchen, and it wasn't getting very heated, but we thought my daughter was sort of playing with her dolls in another room, and she came, and after it was all over, she came by and she said, Daddy, when Mommy says she didn't do something, she didn't do something. And we looked at it, my husband and I looked at each other like, oh my gosh, we had no idea she heard any of this.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you back too and do the flip side of this is the importance of showing affection towards one another in front of your children, the positive turn on this. Andrea Petersen and Dr. Harold Koplewicz, fabulous discussion. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.